My name's Rebecca Gamble and I'm a graduate working in Homes England's Local Government Capacity Centre. And I'm delighted to welcome you to the first summer learning programme. So this offers a series of knowledge sharing sessions on topics that you have told us are important. And today's event will be an introduction to Homes England, led by some of our senior leaders from around the agency. So before we start, I'll just give a brief introduction to the Local Government Capacity Centre and a run over the timetable for today's event. So this summer learning programme is brought to you by Homes England's new Local Government Capacity Centre. This summarises who we are and what we do. So the Local Government Capacity Centre develops, curates and designs well-structured, accessible offers for local government, with the aim of increasing capacity and skills to make homes happen in the short, medium and long term. We've launched the centre following extensive research and consultation with you across local government and a whole wide range of other partners to determine where authorities need most support and how this can be best delivered. This summer learning programme is one of our first initiatives. We are starting small, but we have a lot more to come. We are also keen to hear your ideas on how you'd like the Local Government Capacity Centre to develop and how we can best work together on this. Next slide, please, James. So this morning, we are joined by several of Homes England's senior leaders. We have Deborah Ward, Director for the Local Government Capacity Centre, who will be covering an introduction to the agency. We are also joined by Terry Fuller, Acquisitions Director, who will be speaking about the Development Directorate. We have Sophie White with us, Director of Infrastructure Grants, who will be speaking about the Investment Directorate. And finally, we have Paul Kitson, Director of Markets, Partners and Places, who will be talking about the work of his directorate. So I'll now pass over to Debbie Ward to give an introduction to Homes England.
Good morning, everybody. It's really great to see so many people joined us, and I hope some of those technical difficulties get ironed out for you so that we can get your feedback through Slido. We've tried to make everything as practical as possible, as straightforward, and we're keeping it short and sweet, we hope. A little bit of background from me. My entire career has been spent in local government, apart from the last year working with Homes England to do some work on how they could help shape themselves and react differently to be able to work better with local government and to be able to share some of the capacity that we have. So I've been responsible for shaping how our capacity centre is developing, the kind of tools that we're starting to develop and be able to offer and support you with in the coming months. I think Rebecca said we're starting small. We are a tiny team that's put all of this work together, but working right across the agency with colleagues that are absolutely delighted and are able to join with us today. One of my first reflections of joining the organisation last year was, my goodness, I've worked for what, 36 years in local government, most of that time with housing, and I hadn't really understood just how much Homes England did. And I wasn't alone, because when we were asking that question as we were starting to develop and pull our offer together, lots of people didn't clearly know what Homes England did. So this is a very short, sharp, very practical session in trying to make sure that we address that gap clearly and become much more open and engage with you across the sector. Next slide, please. So who are we? Next slide, please. We are the government's housing and delivery agency, are the latest in the iteration of a number of agencies that have gone in the past and worked alongside local government. And as I say, with the length of my career, I've worked alongside quite a few. And we have set up with a very specific mission and I think a very different ethos to perhaps some of the agencies that have been preceded us. So set up only in 2018 with a mission being to intervene where market failures occur, to ensure more homes are built in areas of greatest need and to improve affordability. And we have a role in the quality and the developmental approach to building in the future, and we'll looking at the sustainability of all that we do by creating a more resilient and diverse housing market. It's a very clear mission in terms of what we're doing, and a shift really from that very hard programme edge that some of our predecessors had. Next slide, please. Our strategic objectives, anybody who's looked into our corporate strategy will have seen these, but I think really important to really understand what's behind them. We do unlock public and private land where the market won't. And the purpose behind it, obviously, to get more homes built and where they're needed. So real rationale behind it, but we will step in and we will support that unlocking of land. We will ensure that there's a range of investment products available to support house building and infrastructure, including more affordable homes and housing for rent. And again, where it's the coming back to our mission, where the market is not acting and bringing that forward straightforwardly. We'll improve construction productivity. Our commitment to work with modern methods of construction are very clear, and one of the things that makes us quite notable quite often, it's one of the things that's featured in information about us, and there's been a real commitment to doing that work and to seeing where we can bring that quality into the investment in that work as well. We'll create more resilient and competitive market. We are looking and always seeking ways, and know that local government is a really key partner in supporting smaller builders, in getting new entrants and promoting better design and higher quality in homes, and working with you to make sure that we can do that. And we are making changes across how we work as a whole organisation, how SMTs can work and engage with us differently, and in all the systems that we use and all our applications as we're trying to become more focused and easier to actually engage with and do business with. We will offer expert support for priority locations. There isn't the capacity to do it everywhere. Part of what we're doing with the capacity centre is to give some more direct help and access to information that you can use yourselves and access yourselves. But where there is a real high priority in location, where we've got that remit and that priority level, then we will offer that very direct support. And indeed, some of you on the call today will be aware of that. And we effectively deliver home ownership products. We are the engine of government to be able to deliver those programmes and those products and provide an industry standard service for consumers for us to be able to do that. Next slide, please. In terms of achievements, just to give you an idea of the scale of the intervention and the work that we've done, 1.84 billion in development finance, 1.26 billion in infrastructure finance, 160 million pounds in equity deals, 3.6 billion in infrastructure grants for local authorities, 2.2 billion of funding for affordable housing, and we've secured another 7.5 billion. And we offer expert support, as I've said, to be able to support all this work, and leveraged about 75 billion of private finance into our housing markets across the country. That's since we set up in 2018. But you can see the scale of that investment and that work we're doing, and that balance between bringing money in from a range of different other sources, as well as money going directly through us, either in that development or in that infrastructure work. Next slide, please. Okay. So Homes England operates at arm's length from MHCLG, but MHCLG, in the same way as it is for you local authorities, it is our ministry that we work closely with from government, and they sponsor the work of Homes England. So we are aligned absolutely to government policy on housing. We operate with a board that are accountable through that, and have a chairman, Peter Freeman, long expertise, interest and knowledge in regeneration activity in particular, and many of you may know some of his best work in the Queen's Cross development, other developments in Birmingham, etc. So very knowledgeable and ambitious for housing across the country and a real understanding of it. We have an interim chief executive at this moment in time, Gordon Moore, and some of you who've picked up on press may know that we are just going through the process of appointing a new chief executive, and that announcement is coming out. Sitting on there with the chair and the chief executive on the board, we have Simon Dudley, Stephen Bell, Teresa O'Neill, OBE, Duncan Sutherland, I beg your pardon, Mark Renison, Olivia Scanlon, Sadie Morgan, OBE, and Vanessa Murden. And what's important about them is the range of knowledge and experience they bring in the housing sector. There is strong financial knowledge and commitment in there from a wide range of banking backgrounds. There is design quality from architects in there, and local government knowledge as well, in really understanding the importance of homes in communities. Our structure, very simply, chief CEO role. Then we have a Development Directorate led by Stephen Kinsella, who is our Chief Land and Development Officer, an Investment Directorate led by Harry Swells, our Chief Investment Officer, and Markets, Parcels and Places with Paul Kitson, our Executive Director in that role, and you'll hear more from him later. In our Help to Buy functions, Will German is our Director, Corporate Resourcer led by Linda McCullum, Chief Executive and Director and Chief Financial Officer, and then an Executive Office where Amy Caston is Chief of Staff, and I'm acting as well at this point in time into our transformation work to make sure that we're getting that really good, strong perspective in changing the business and how we work to be more matched to the kind of organisation we want to be and to work better with you and indeed other partners across the whole market. Next slide, please. What do we do? We've given you some of the examples of already what we're spending and what we've invested, so and that lines up with this. Next slide, please. What do we mean by market failure, if that's what we're trying to address it? And we don't want to, what we don't want to do is to replace market activity. That can do that. We might encourage it, but we don't want to intervene there. So it's called preventing market failure, and we do it in 4 key ways: by delivering more better homes more quickly, by delivering wider benefits to society, communities and partners, and helping partners to work together, and helping partners to make fully informed decisions. So a range of ways that we can do that, both with skill and professional competence and capacity, with money, of course, and also with the connections and the connectivity that we have across the whole market. Next slide, please. And our offer to you as our partners across local government, we really want to help you do what you do well in delivering more homes. We want to get realising local plan ambitions by offering our support, expertise and funding in ways that are accessible and usable for you. We can help identify and shape opportunities and work through some of those barriers where we might be able to support that work. Create stronger partnerships by brokering relationships between the public and the private sector, between developers and specialists, a range of different ways we can support with that. By delivering more affordable housing, working up best solutions with partners, developers and specialists. We do deliver direct, as you will hear later on, and using our Affordable Homes programme, moving into much more strategic partnerships with ambitious local authorities to give them better certainty and flexibility over periods of time as we build pipelines of housing supply coming forward into the market, and finding private sector finance opportunities, which as a collective voice we're in a much better position to do and can help you do that in a more focused way. And increasing capacity and resources in trying to respond to specific needs and the challenges that we absolutely recognise that local government are facing and continue to face. Next slide, please. We're going to go on now to take you through a bit more in detail of what I've touched on and try and bring alive some of the work that we do across our directorates in our engagement with you. I'm going to hand over now to Simon. Thank you. My apologies, it's handing over to Terry Fuller, our Acquisitions Director. Thank you.
Good morning, thank you very much. I'm going to quickly take you through the Development Directorate here at Homes England. Next slide, please. So effectively, we're led by Stephen Kinsella, Chief Land and Development Officer. So everything regarding land purchase, partnerships, together with development of sites and selling them falls under Stephen. The structure we have is at the front end, of course, you have acquisitions and partnering. That's led by Keith. Once we've secured the site, purchased it, or got the partnership agreement in place, we can then hand it over to Barry with his development team, who will sort out the planning, put in the infrastructure, and then create tranches of land to sell into the marketplace. That's supported by Robert in technical services. So we have engineers, architects, designers, you name it, we've got an expert on it. And then we've also have within the team Beth, who looks after the programs, the planning aspect of money and the finances. Next slide, please. So our business at the front end, it's very much buying the land or taking land options together with partnership deals. So we don't necessarily buy the land, but we'll work in partnership with partners in order to bring the site forward using our expertise and often our money. We get the planning consent, mostly allocated in local plans, then an outline consent together with the Section 106. We very rarely get the detailed consent. We leave that to the house builder. We'll also put major infrastructure in place on many of our sites. That will de-risk the site in many respects and make it more attractive to the house builders before we then sell tranches of land onto the house builders. An example of that is Northstowe here in Cambridge. You'll see the illustration on the right-hand side, 10,000 new homes, of which 8,500 are controlled by Homes England. There we've taken it through the entire gambit of planning, together with spending substantial sums of money. We've just completed putting in the £75 million dual carriageway that links into the A14 and huge balancing ponds. And in that case, it means that house builders can turn out without having to think about putting in huge amounts of capital to break the site out. It makes it far quicker in those terms to actually get the site underway. We've just disposed of our first 2 tranches to house builders and the scheme's on track. Overall, we've got over 8,000 hectares of land and over 600 active projects in the land team. And we suspect we're probably the largest land and master developer in the country. So for us, it's about bringing sites forward that otherwise wouldn't come because they're too complex, such as Northstowe or cash hungry, very much Northstowe, acting as master developer and getting the placemaking right and the design right and making it a place that is sustainable and desirable. We also have other targets that include MMC, quality placemaking and accelerating delivery. So rather than just 50 homes a year from one outlet, we're looking more like 100, even 120. Next slide, please. How we operate. So broadly in 3 regions, North, Central, Southwest, and the yellow areas, very much the Southern. Within that, there are teams, both in terms of acquisitions and development directorate, and we work very closely with one another as we secure and then pass the site on. In the bottom left-hand side, you will see the photograph of what's called Northern Arc in mid-Sussex. That was 3,500 homes that 3 developers have been working on. They seem to struggle to get coordination and agreement between themselves. We ended up going in, buying the entire 3,500 plots for cash from them, and now we're putting in well over £100 million worth of infrastructure road. Simultaneously, we've broken out the first 2 tranches of land to sell onto house builders, working very close with Mid-Sussex there from the very beginning and still working closely with them, incredibly aligned with the local authority to achieve their ambitions. Next slide, please. So you will see from these maps that we've got a huge number of key land holdings with the potential in the left-hand map of 500 plus homes or more, although we do hold land which is incredibly small, left over from mostly our new towns experience from the 1950s and 60s, but for the most part bringing forward larger scale sites so that we can actually make an impact in the local marketplace. The right-hand map shows very much those where we've been spending either in the past or to date together with commercial outlets. So we're not just about housing, but commercial comes as a subsidiary to the housing where it's required. Next slide, please. So what's on the horizon for us? Well, without a shadow of a doubt, increasing our master developer role, because there aren't many master developer, house builder developers out there in truth, and the market needs more players, and that's one of the roles that we'll pick up. More urban regeneration, particularly in the light of COVID-19 and its net effect. We are absolutely committed to more MMC on our sites. And in fact, when we put a piece of land into the marketplace, it's not just about price, it's also about design quality and MMC as we try and raise the bar in both of those elements. Increasing the quality of placemaking is at the heart of what our government ministers want and is at the heart of everything that we do, hence why we have master planners and designers in-house that will advise us on the sites we purchase and how to take them through and improve them, and of course sustainability. Next slide, please. So how do we work with our local government and other partners? Well, it's got to be, first of all, the alignment of policy and values and objectives. And if we can't get those aligned, then it makes longer term relationships very difficult. So finding that alignment. We can then use our multidisciplinary in-house schemes and also make our consultancy framework available to the local authority, which will help them choose preferably the right consultant to work with. We're looking at more partnering and partnership agreements with our public-private relationships. So, for example, we currently have a land option, which we're doing 50-50 with a local authority and supporting another local authority and putting in a huge bid for a piece of private sector land, and we will work that up with them. We're also working with churches and predominantly education establishments as well. So all of this is to help to achieve the 5-year land supply together with the Minister's 300,000 new homes a year. We'd like to think that we're contributing significantly to all of those objectives, driving quality and high quality residential planning permissions within a very sound legal framework, so we can ensure that we actually deliver what we say we're going to deliver. Next slide, please. I will now hand over to Sophie.
Thanks, Terry. Good morning, all. Can I just check that my sound's working all right, because I've had to use different headphones?
Yes, it is, Sophie.
Super. Thanks, Rebecca. Right, crack on. Next slide, please. So then, first of all, this is the Investment Directorate. We were originally born back in 2014 to basically manage the agency's lending businesses or funding businesses. So as you can see here, the group is headed up by Harry Swales, and then we have Jackie Jacobs on our affordable housing side, Will German for Help to Buy, Ian Goldsworthy in our Director of Loans, myself on Director of Infrastructure Grants, John Bull Diamond as Equity and Partnerships, and Ken Beach on Portfolio Management, with Tracy Back, who runs Harry's Chief Investments Office. Looking at these slides this morning, it just made me think as you will see, we've got quite a few interim posts at the moment. That's just because of, you will be aware, we've had a lot of changes around the agency recently. A lot of those are in recruitment, and I'm expecting that the team will be more settled permanently very soon. So if we can move on to the next slide, I'll just talk a little bit more about what each of these teams do, just to make it clear. So first of all, the loans business, this basically runs for us our debt team. So this is transactional front end, working with partners, as it says here, to provide short and long-term loans. So short-term loans would be development finance, very much focused on the small and medium enterprise sector of the market, which has been a real push for government over recent years. And then also longer term infrastructure funding. So as much as Terry talks about the Homes England's business, where we're managing and delivering our own sites, the loans business is basically doing the same model for external partners, for third-party partners, but being able to provide debt to them to enable them to carry on and do more when the debt markets were quite constrained, particularly for SME or for that longer term infrastructure financing, where we can do much longer, up to sort of 8-10 year terms. Relating to that, then we have our performance business management, which is an internal support to make sure that we are funding to plan, that we are providing insights, really thinking about our assurance, that we're managing our own risk profiles, as you can imagine, the amount of money that we're delivering out through the team or through the group is very extensive. And so making sure that we're on top of how those projects are going and how the market's dealing with us is really important. Moving on then to product equity and partnerships. Oh, sorry, let's go back a slide. Working with our markets placement partners, who you're going to hear from in a moment, and development, to really think about how we can enable third-party enterprises to work more closely with us, and in many instances with yourselves. Then we've got affordable housing grants, which I won't go into because I'm assuming everyone will know well here. Portfolio management basically runs the contracted portfolio of the loans team. So once the scheme has been contracted, that will move through to portfolio management, who do the delivery and sort of the drawdowns and monitoring of that role. Infrastructure grants, which is my team, which is basically providing grant funds to local authorities for infrastructure through the housing infrastructure funds and local authority accelerated construction, which many of you may be aware of. And then finally, as touched on, we have the Chief Investment Officer, who supports Harry and the wider group. So next slide, please. So just in terms of what's our current business, so we have the Home Building Fund, which I've touched on, is this development and infrastructure fund that's to small and medium sized enterprises, and also Help to Buy, which is effectively an equity product providing first-time buyers with that equity model to be able to help them secure to get onto the housing market. On the grant side, three main products: Rough Sleepers Accommodation Programme, which is supporting MHCLG to deliver rough sleepers accommodation, and really particularly through sort of COVID times has really come to the fore how important that is for us to make sure that individuals are appropriately housed. Also, obviously, significant affordable housing commitments to support the cost of building housing for rent or sale. And then finally, as I've touched on, the infrastructure grants team, which is providing that infrastructure. So the link there is not so direct, it's unlocking land for housing, but still really important in bringing forward housing land. And then next slide, please. And looking forward in terms of what's on the horizon. So we have the National Housing House Building Fund, a part of which is the Housing Delivery and Diversification Fund. So this is new funds, building on the success particularly from Home Building Fund, which is providing new debt finance into the market, which can provide either senior debt, mezzanine, which is sitting behind a primary lender, balance sheet, which is when it's funding against companies' balance sheets as opposed to specific sites, and as touched on, longer term infrastructure funding. So it's really provided that commitment to continue to support funding into the SME market, really thinking about diversification. Our real drive here is about bringing new entrants into the market and helping new entrants grow. And then on the other side, on grants, so we've got the monitoring of the existing grant awards and very much working very closely with yourselves and with markets placement partners to deliver that pipeline of new grant funding opportunities for the future. Affordable housing is increased delivery through continuous market engagement, and really again now a big part, and I think Terry's already talked about as well, is really thinking now about the design and sustainability of housing, and how we use our tools to really drive that forwards. And then additionally, there's additional capital available, both capital and revenue, so capacity support revenue and also cash for build in terms of the rough sleepers accommodation over the next couple of years. So next slide. This is our final slide and just touches on, I suppose, how we most often interact and work with local government. So predominantly, of course, around the affordable housing programme. So there's engagement sessions identifying gaps in the affordable housing market and promoting greater collaboration between us. Again, the rough sleepers accommodation, really thinking about how we can support the development proposals for local authorities and capital bids and partners. Again, really thinking about the areas of higher number of rough sleepers. On my side, on infrastructure grants, really now thinking about that space about business development. What are the grant products of the future, and how do we make sure that we can assess them and get ourselves ready for when new funds are available? Thinking about market failure issues, thinking about different ways potentially that we can look at funding. And then finally, just very briefly, and it's a debt product rather than a grant piece, but there is an emerging equity model. So a bit like Terry talked earlier, we're really thinking about how we can use our funds to build public-private models and use our equity models to really bring more capacity into the market, more activity in the market, and potentially using our opportunities to pair up yourselves with also third-party developers who may have the sort of development capacity and wherewithal to do that. I think that's it from me. And Sylvia's just asked a great question, which is MPP, which I think I'm handing over to Paul to pick up on.
Sophie, thank you. Can you hear me? If you could just give me a nod, that'd be great.
Yeah, we can, Paul.
Thanks, Victoria.
Yeah.
Hello there. Welcome. I'm Paul Kitson. I'm Interim Executive Director for MPP. So to answer that question, it's markets, partners and places. So I'm just going to run through who we are, what we're doing, and how we can help you actually, which is the most important thing. So if we could flip on to the next slide, please. I'm not going to run down all of these names. You can read those for yourself. I think the important thing to take from this slide is that we're a nationally distributed team engaged in all parts of the market. As a council, you should know who your MPP, your Homes England contacts are, and somebody in your organisation will. If you can't find out who that is, I'll be surprised if you did, but if you can't, feel free to drop me a line and I'll be quite happy to let you know who the key people are in your particular area. It's really important that you know that. Next slide, please. So what are we trying to do? So I'll let you read through these. 3 key things we're trying to do, I guess. The first is we've got a really diverse workforce within our directorate. We've got lots of different kind of people. We've got economists, researchers, social scientists, surveyors, planners, engineers, people from all sorts of professional backgrounds as well. So it's kind of quite a rich team actually. And the first thing we try and do, we are doing, is guiding the agency as a whole in its strategy and its business strategy, using our kind of empirical and qualitative data to sort of point the direction of where we think the business should be taken. So we're providing a kind of a range of internal services, I guess, some of which you won't necessarily come across, but some of which might be particularly interesting to you. And one of those services could be around the service we provide the agency around building up economic cases. So we've got some great economists who provide that service for the whole agency. We have to go and get approvals for budget in the same way that you do, and we need economic business cases. So that's one of the services we provide internally. So well, that's an internal service. As the Capacity Centre of Excellence develops, some of those skills and in the same way that we'll get the Technical Centre of Excellence in Homes England will flow through, and we'll do similar workshops to this one, I guess. The second thing we're trying to do here is drive new business for the agency. That's a phrase we use. It's not a phrase we've used much before, actually, business development or new business. So it's a new thing for us. But we're trying, through our teams active across the country, is making sure that we understand all parts of the market, and we understand particularly this interface between what the private and the third sector want to do, where the investment ambition meets the political ambition. And that's where you all come in as local authorities through the local plan process, through your own member involvement and your corporate ambition. So what we look for right across the country is that kind of sweet spot of where there is private sector ambition, local authority ambition, but something's not quite right in the middle. And that's where we want to come in, try and help sort that project out, provide you a little bit of support. Sometimes it's moral support, sometimes it's technical, sometimes it's making sure that we're transferring some knowledge to you. But the point of that is then to make sure that those projects are in a good shape for Terry's teams, for Sophie's teams, to then act in a transactional way with funding on them. And the third way then is, and this is the really interesting space for me for local authority partners, is how does the MPP teams support local authorities and other people where we don't see immediately an obvious way that we would transact with you. So we don't think something's ready for a loan, we don't think it's ready for an acquisition, but where it still looks like a great project and there's loads of local ambition. And in particular in this space, we're talking about the brokering and the enabling, like I said a minute ago, the transfer of knowledge. How do we make sure that we're giving our expertise to you, you're giving some back? How do we make sure we're bringing in partner X that we happen to know wants to do exactly what you want to do? You might not know about that. We do have quite a privileged position in the market in the sense that lots of people talk to us. Well, everybody wants to talk to us, don't they? I guess so. We end up having to talk to a lot of people and seeing, therefore, where we can join some dots up. So that third bit's really important for me, I think, and that's where we spend quite a bit of time with you as partners. An example of that, I guess, so what I call sort of pre-transactional would be the government's commitment to the garden communities, for example. So at least 50 of your organisations will already benefit from that status from government, and you'll find that really helpful in getting local acceptance and enthusiasm for development at scale. We help people in 2 broad ways, I guess, on that. One is we do distribute some cash, don't we, with the ministry to those councils that are part of the programme. so that you can actually then procure the skills you need, usually project directors, those sorts of people. But we also then use experts in strategic planning, the people that are really good at delivering new sites, large sites rather, into council. So there's a kind of knowledge transfer bit. I keep using that word, but it's really important to understand that sometimes the best support doesn't always come in hard cash. It comes in making sure that we've got the right people talking to the right people. If we could flip on to the next slide, please. So what are we doing across this year, and how does that possibly benefit you? Well, that first bullet point I think I've just talked through. So we are undertaking business development. Sophie and Terry touched on this a little bit, and we have had a new chairman now for 6 months. We've got a new chief executive on the way. There are some policy areas that we're looking at. You'll have seen some press articles with Peter Freeman talking about our interest in the regeneration agenda. You'll be more than aware that the government is understanding and developing its concept around levelling up. All of these things are going to be really exciting and really of interest to your members and chief officers. And so we're supporting the ministry through our sort of technical teams, our economists, our strategists, our researchers and so on, to develop up that policy work. As an organisation, we'll be refreshing our strategic plan over the next 6 months. We know there's a national spending review in the autumn, so we'll be working with government on all of those things actually. So putting in the kind of the bedrock, the why and the where of policy, which is really important. And that leads to the third point really, which is just this increased appetite and thrust from government, I guess, to look at this 1 million homes in Parliament. So this is what the government want us to do. This is what we're trying to then translate into all of those great things that Sophie's team, Terry's team are up to. I think Sophie touched on this. I think 1 or 2 questions as well in the sidebar. We've done some great work around the productivity objective of ours and the diversification. So how do we build capacity in the smaller organisations? How do we make sure we're encouraging productivity? I think we've done some great work through our financial transactions and some of our land transactions in stimulating supply. So we now know there is quite a lot of potential supply for MMC across the country. And what I think we'll probably turn our focus to as much as the supply now is using those networks is how can we aggregate demand for MMC in all its different ranges. And I know personally I've had quite a few chats over the past weeks and months with small businesses who really want to get into the MMC picture but don't quite have the clout themselves. And I think there's a real role here for local authorities to play to work with us. You know your SMEs in your area, you know your smaller RPs, we know those as well, but we tend to focus more effort, of course, on the larger ones, strategic partnerships. So it'd be really interesting through our MPP teams with you as councils to have those conversations about how do we aggregate demand for MMC, because if you look across the country, it's clear that there's still capacity of supply, isn't there? There's still spare supply in the sector, and it strikes me that we've got an opportunity here to work collectively, collaboratively, to try and make sure that that supply is actually fully tapped up, because it'd be a real waste for it not to be given the support for it. And cost and labour and those issues, they're just not going away, are they? So I've spoken a little bit on the 5th bullet point there already about how we draw on market intelligence and data. We do have a geospatial team that do some great work, some fantastic work in analysing market trends, analysing where we do activity, analysing where there are market gaps. All of that stuff informs the strategies which then inform all of our teams right across the agency. We do work with consultancies, and one of the things that we've done with some authorities across the country is invest. So we spend money on pieces of consultancy work that we think develop projects and move projects along towards the point where they might start to be implemented. And if I just give one small example of this, I suppose it might be a city centre regeneration site. There might be multiple landowners there. We've worked again in a cross-agency way to bring both the public and the private sectors around the table together. We've also been able to throw a little bit of cash into the pot, as it were, in order to then produce a master plan for the site, which further consolidates, I guess, or clarifies the relative positions of all of the partners around the table on that particular regen site. That doesn't deliver it, but what it does do is it moves it through the development cycle, doesn't it? It starts to give members, officers, confidence that that project's going somewhere. It gives the private sector confidence that the project's moving in the right direction. And because we've got that kind of multi-agency approach in that work with the council, then the transactional team, so Sophie's team, Terry's team, are around the table looking for those transactional opportunities later on. So we can spend money on consultancies with councils to deliver key work which demonstrably moves projects forward. So we're really interested to hear from you in that sort of area as well. And my team working right across the country will know where I think most of your key priorities are, I guess, in that space. And then finally, 2 weeks ago, and the reason we're here today is to really start the Local Government Capacity Centre of Excellence. If we could just flip onto the next slide, please. One of the things we've been dwelling on really over the past sort of 2 years or 3 years or so is that local authorities do have a very broad range of things to do, and local authorities come in many different shapes and sizes. We've been working since I've been here for a decade across the country with every local authority across the country. But what's true is, it's always important to make sure that we're actually providing the optimum service to our external customers. And one of the approaches we've taken here is to try and clarify our relationship with councils and to try and increase the base level, I guess, the base level amount of support that each council can have. And we're doing it through this three-pronged approach. So I'm not going to read the slides, but there's simply universal offer, pipeline offer, and focused offer. So everybody gets access to something. It's a bronze seal name, isn't it? Universal offer. Making sure that through things like this, that people can just kind of jump onto a call and learn a little bit about. And there's a whole series of these going across the next few weeks. By providing this sort of thing and a whole bunch of kind of web-based applications and videos and chats and blogs and stuff, that actually every council, from relatively junior project officer right through to chief officer, has access to a whole bunch of interesting material that they can then pull on. The pipeline offer is, I guess, what we would call the way of working where we're starting to invest in a place. The MPP team start to work through different opportunities. One or two of those might start to get some significant funding from Homes England. The developer might get some significant investment. It might be the council gets some support funding, those kinds of things, a pipeline offer. And then moving up to the upper end, I guess, which is a focused offer, which is where I guess we're talking about a much deeper engagement with a set of places where there are significant sizable opportunities, there are obvious barriers to their delivery, and where we want to really get stuck in and make sure that as an agency, as a cross-agency wide, we're making a very, very conscious decision that we're going to act with intent in this particular place. Hopefully, and we'll find out over the coming weeks, it's really important that we get feedback on these events and all of the events that you attend or subscribe to, including the web content. Hopefully, by taking this approach, we make sure that everybody has instantly accessible stuff that they can get hold of. We continue to do our transactional pipeline work, which has real benefit to local communities. And then in those places where there's best opportunity and biggest opportunity, we start to make a real impact. So we think it's going to work, but frankly, you'll tell us that in the coming weeks and months. Thank you for coming along this morning. It's been great to see everybody. I had down the names earlier and I saw quite a few names I recognised, so good to see you all again.